As Republicans are forced to defend this failed lame duck president and his failed policies and the stories he tells himself at night about an election he lost, Democrats are gathering strength and energy and delivering actual messages about what they will do for the people they are asking to elect them. Which brings me to the guy who finds himself in the unexpected position of facing Tom Tiffany in November. Because later on this hour, I will be joined by Democratic candidate for Wisconsin Governor David Crowley after his stunning upset victory in last night's primary. This morning, he attended a unity breakfast along with his primary opponent, Francesca Hong. You can see them both. We tried to lighten them up there so you could see them in the photo. And while there are a lot of hot takes out there about what his victory means, the newly minted Democratic candidate for governor had a lot to say about what he thinks his victory means.
Over the past few months, you've heard a lot of people try to define this election as a battle between the left and the center, between progressives and the establishment, between insiders and outsiders. That narrative misses the entire point of what we're doing. Because when I traveled across Wisconsin, I didn't meet people who introduced themselves that way. I met parents wondering how they'll afford childcare. I met workers who want wages that keep up with the cost of living. I met farmers trying to preserve family traditions. I met small business owners trying to keep their doors open, and I met seniors who deserve security and dignity after a lifetime of work. I met young people who simply want a fair chance to build a life right here in this great state we call Wisconsin. We may not agree on every policy. We may not use the same labels, but we all want safe communities, strong schools, affordable health care, good paying jobs, and a brighter future for all of our children.
So the point about national narratives he made and what they missed is key here and important for all of us to listen to, myself included. I mean, Crowley's victory was a surprise to many after polls showed his Democratic Socialist opponent leading in this race by double digits, many polls. And after an upset victory like that, there's always a tendency to have a sweeping take about what one race means for the power of the progressives versus moderates, insiders versus outsiders. Believe me, I fall into this too. But it's also important to look at the whole picture of candidates winning. If anything, all of the results from last night's election proved once again that the Democratic Party is a big tent. On the same night that Wisconsin primary voters nominated Crowley over a Democratic Socialist for statewide office, Minnesota primary voters chose Peggy Flanagan to be their Senate nominee, who won her primary with ads like this one.
We need Peggy Flanagan as our next senator. She'll fight for Medicare for all and paid family and medical leave, reject corporate PAC money, and always stand up to ICE, Trump, and his corruption.
Peggy is going to stand up to the greed of the billionaire class.
The next senator from Minnesota,
Peggy Flanagan.
She won her primary by 20 points. That was a huge sweeping victory for her. Now, contrast that ad with another ad released just yesterday by a different kind of Democrat running statewide, also in the Midwest.
I trained as a marksman in the Marine Corps. Focus, discipline. I'm Bo Bai. I joined the Marines to fight for this country. Now I'm running for Secretary of State to fight for you and clean up a corrupt office. I'll expose every wasted dollar and no-bid contract and work with both parties to lower taxes for families to make life more affordable.
Now, you may relate more to Bo Bai, you may relate more to Peggy Flanagan, or like a little bit of both of them. But the point is the Democratic Party tent is big enough that everyone from Peggy Flanagan to David Crowley to Bo Bai to Jon Ossoff can all run very different races in different parts of the country, and some of them in the same parts of the country. That's an actual conclusion to draw from last night's election, just like it was an actual conclusion to draw from the night that Abigail Spanberger and Zohran Mamdani both won. Which brings me to another narrative I think is missing from coverage of these races right now, how quickly the Democratic Party can unify when it needs to. And as I mentioned before, the Wisconsin Democratic Party wasted no time in coming together for multiple unity events where primary rivals came together with a shared mission of defeating Republicans this November. It's similar to what we saw after last week's bitter primary in Michigan, where after an absolutely brutal primary campaign, The losing candidates, Haley Stevens, was quick to embrace the nominee Abdul El Sayed, and vice versa. They embraced each other. Democrats have, for the most part, not let these primary competitions dampen their enthusiasm. If anything, these primaries have generated more Democratic enthusiasm than we've seen in a very long time. The Associated Press actually estimates that nearly 800,000 people voted in yesterday's Democratic primary in Wisconsin. And just to put that number in context, because it's like, what does that number mean? You can see this on your screen. That's about a 50% increase in turnout from the last open primary for governor back in 2018, which ended up being a wave election year for Democrats. We saw a similar boost in turnout in the Michigan primary last week, where the AP estimates more than 1.5 million people turned out to vote in the Democratic primary. And that's up more than 50% from the last open Senate primary just 2 years ago. So that's a huge increase in enthusiasm in a bunch of different states. Democrats are more enthusiastic about voting in these elections than they have been in a number of years. And there's also a relentless focus we're seeing on what it is going to take to win. We've seen Democratic voters make those decisions, like choosing David Crowley in last night's primary. We've also seen the National Party make those decisions, like their unified calls to replace Graham Plattner on the ballot in Maine. And we've seen Democratic candidates themselves make selfless strategic decisions in places like Nebraska, South Dakota, and Idaho, where Democratic Senate candidates have dropped out of their races to pave the way for independent candidates who have a better chance of winning in those places. At the end of the day, for all the debates about who has the most sway in the party and which tactics and message work best, the shared goal is electing people who are going to hold this administration and all of the spineless minions that blindly follow it to account. Which brings me to the most overlooked narrative of all of this election cycle, in my view. Because for all the hemming and hawing about the direction of the Democratic Party, there's not been nearly enough attention paid to the people Republicans are nominating to run against them. I mean, last night, Republicans in Minnesota nominated former sports broadcaster Michelle Tafoya to be their candidate for U.S. Senate. And she won that nomination despite saying things like this about the cost of Trump's war in Iran.
Here we are in a conflict in the Middle East, which is bringing gas prices up again. I think right now, at least just kind of keeping a stiff upper lip. Maybe you take one less trip to Starbucks, and so that gas goes a little further until this thing is over and these gas prices come back down again. Let's just try to be patriots about this.
Just be a patriot, everyone. Suck it up. Pay for this war nobody wanted. Maybe take fewer trips to Starbucks, everyone. That's her advice there. Very of the people, that Michelle Tafoya. Now, for the record, Moody's estimates that this war has cost the average American about $1,100. It's a little tip from Michelle Tafoya out there. That's about 278 venti coffees in just the past 6 months if you're on the Starbucks plan she's recommended. It's not just tone-deaf candidates like Tafoya that Republicans are nominating. I mean, the man with the aggressively manicured eyebrows you see on your screen is 26-year-old Michael Alfonso, who won the Republican nomination to run for Wisconsin's 7th congressional district last night. And the guy has a very thin resume. I mean, his most relevant employment experience appears to be a year-long stint working as a producer for Dan Bongino's podcast. But he's the son-in-law of Trump's reality TV star / transportation secretary, Sean Duffy. So there's that. And his father-in-law has played quite an important role in his campaign because just 10 days before Trump endorsed him for this Wisconsin seat, Alfonso changed his voter registration from his home in Florida to his father-in-law's house in Wisconsin. His campaign claims he has lived in Wisconsin most of his life, which makes you wonder why he lists Sean Duffy's house as his residence for voting. I'm sure we'll soon learn. And that's really just scratching the surface when it comes to problematic candidates Republicans have chosen for important seats. Heading into this year, Republicans were giddy about their chances of flipping the Georgia Senate seat held by Democrat Jon Ossoff. But thanks to an endorsement from Donald Trump, Republicans chose one of the worst possible candidates they could for that swing state race. Republican Senate candidate Mike Collins has spent the last few weeks sinking in the polls as he dodges questions about his controversial comments and his ties to white nationalists. But the controversies just keep coming for this guy. I mean, just last night, newly released video shows Mike Collins enthusiastically tying himself to one of Trump's most unpopular ideas when he got this question from a pardoned January 6th rioter during a campaign event.
Would you support either the Victims of Political Weaponization Fund, Compensation Fund, or some form of compensatory relief, not just to January 6ers like myself, but all Americans, left, right, and center, who have become victims of a weaponized political system?
Yeah, you know, it's anything political. A lot of things have been politicized and weaponized. And when the federal government harms you, then yes, they have a liability to. That's easy. Yes, sir.
Slush fund for January 6 rioters, one of whom is at your event, because why not? That's an easy yes for Mike Collins. Doesn't that tell you a lot? I mean, this is the kind of candidate Republicans have chosen to nominate this year in the Senate district that they have felt they had the best chance in taking. Well, Democrats are building a broad and unified coalition that includes everyone from progressives to moderates to Democratic socialists to independents who don't even identify as Democrats. That's the narrative that matters heading into this election, and one that deserves more attention. Joining me now is Democratic Senator Jon Ossoff of Georgia. It's great to see you, Senator. Let me start just by asking you. I mean, your opponent, good to see you. Your